Sure. So, hello everyone, welcome to NEADS webinar on disability in graduate study. I would like to start this meeting with a land acknowledgement. So the National Education Association of Disabled Students, NEADS, would like to begin this event by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. We commit to continue and explore and make meaningful contributions to the calls to action that result with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Elizabeth, to you.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah. So my name is Elizabeth Moeller. I'm going to be your host today, your panel host. We have three wonderful guests that I'm going to let introduce themselves in a moment. But before we get to our panelists, we also have another really exciting opportunity and guest that we'd like to hear from. Before we kick off our panel today talking about graduate education, I've invited Dr. Kathleen Clark to talk a little bit about some research that they are doing around graduate education, barriers to that education coming out of this COVID landscape and what that looks like. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathleen, to share a little bit about the important work you're doing.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I am going to share my screen. I do have a few slides for this. And I've asked Frank to share the slides in the chat, but I think I can do it too.
Got it. It's in the chat. I see it there.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for the invitation to join this and kind of kick it off. My name is Kathleen Clark. I'm assistant professor at Wilfrid Laurier University. Just to give you a bit of background about me, I did my PhD at the University of Toronto, and my thesis focused on graduate students' mental health, and I used the National College Health Assessment to pull out all of the graduate students from that sample. So there were about 6,000. And then I kind of looked at students with disabilities in that sample, mental health, and compared students to the undergraduate population, because that's one of the common questions that people ask is, what's so different about graduate school in comparison to the undergraduate level? And then I also did 38 interviews with PhD students who self-identified as having a disability. Before I get into kind of how I'm building off of that project with the partnership with NEADS, I wanted to just talk about kind of my trajectory in the PhD program that I did to kind of normalize how long graduate school can take, and that it may not be a linear process. The way we all kind of start out thinking we're going to finish in a certain number of years, and that doesn't always go to plan. So this is kind of my trajectory. I started in 2013. I did coursework. It took me just over 5 years to do the doctorate. And to me, nothing really stands out on this trajectory or journey that, is significant. It just was a long slog. But then when I kind of think back to what some of the things were that's slowed me down or delayed my completion, a faculty member left in my second year that I had intended to work with. I did my comprehensive exam in my second year. Right after my comprehensive exam, another faculty member left. I then had to find a new supervisor when I was done my comprehensive exam, which was pretty challenging. Luckily, someone saved me. And I started my proposal. I got my ethics approval the day before I got married. In my fourth year, I did an ethics amendment. Then I collected data in my fourth year around the same time that I had my son. in July 2018. I took a little bit of time off and then started writing again. I sent my thesis to my full committee in June. I defend in September, graduate in November. So in that final kind of term of my PhD, I had a job interview, I started a new job, sold a house, bought a house. Those are all kind of the personal life factors. And then throughout this entire process, there are mental health challenges, weeks or months where I couldn't make any progress on my thesis. So I just kind of wanted to share this so that whether you're a master's student or a PhD student, everyone has their own journey to complete graduate school, and just try to keep chipping away, I guess. And I just wanted to kind of normalize that these barriers do exist. Oh, it's not going to the next slide. So as I mentioned, one of the questions that I often get is what's different about graduate school, and why do graduate students need this tailored support? And then the second question I get is what is this difference between graduate students with and without a disability, and how might the experiences be different? And a lot of people are not even thinking about graduate students to begin with who are providing support, let alone graduate students with disabilities. So this is where I start when I talk to faculty members or staff on how we can, number one, start talking about graduate students and graduate students with disabilities, and then also how we can further support students' needs. These are some of the general themes around graduate education and why it is different: fewer benchmarks, additional responsibilities, on-campus employment, this increased involvement in production of knowledge, which is different than undergrad, socialization to the profession, and then everyone's favorite part, that the isolation that a lot of folks experience when they get to graduate school. So these are kind of general topics that are highlighted in the literature. And then when it comes to graduate students with disabilities, there are discussions of supervisor relationships, preparation for employment, mental health. And I wanted to mention the survey, the Canadian Graduate and Professional Student Survey. The first time that a question about disability was asked on this survey was in 2016. And that question largely was put on that survey because of advocacy from NEADS. And this is basically the largest data set we have to give us a sense of prevalence of disability. And the most common ones on that survey in 2019 were mental health and a learning disability. And I mean, I just think it's good that we now have some sense of a way that we can start to collect data and hopefully start using some of this information to advocate for additional support on campus. Just quickly, I wanted to mention two studies and where people that are on this call come into my work. So the first project is a study I'm working on at Laurier. We interviewed 39 graduate students who identified as having a disability. We're currently done the data collection. The response was quite overwhelming, which was good. We were able to hear from a lot of people considering we are one institution, and we're starting to analyze those data now. And then using that study to feed into the study that I'm working on in partnership with NEADS. So I partnered with NEADS and with Frank, Elizabeth, I think you were part of that, and Chloe, and we applied for a SSHRC grant to look at graduate students with disabilities and how they were faring throughout the pandemic, the challenges they experienced, and then what kind of changed in terms of support. So we're doing a survey. We're currently just doing the development of the survey. So we'll be collecting data this summer, and then there'll be an option to do follow-up interviews. So I think this is a really good opportunity for folks on the call. If you do want to kind of share your experience throughout the pandemic and be part of a larger study about this, look for a call for participants it'll come out from Frank to complete the survey data, and then maybe participate in a follow-up interview. And then I just wanted to briefly mention that I'm also looking at accessibility staff and their perspectives, and then hopefully in the future looking at faculty and staff. And really my goal is to just understand how we can create an environment in which there's a shared responsibility for supporting graduate students with disabilities. And the onus isn't always on students to advocate. Certainly advocacy is important, but we need to have on the institutional side of things, faculty involvement, staff involvement, and senior leaders also advocating for graduate students with disabilities. So I want to leave it off there and hand it over to Elizabeth and for an engaging discussion about lived experiences. And I hope folks, I kind of just want to let you know as a faculty member, I'm listening, staff are listening, and I'm really hoping that we can build some momentum moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. That's really important. Before I let the panelists introduce themselves, as your moderator, I'd like to very quickly introduce myself. So I'm Elizabeth Moeller. I use she, her, elle pronouns. I've been with NEADS as a researcher for about 10 years now. I'm living the graduate life. I'm a doctoral candidate at Western University, just finished the comps or qualifying exams or candidacy exams. It depends where you're going. And I'm starting the proposal. So, you know, really, really excited to hear what our panelists have to say. So I'd like to start with you, Calvin. I'm wondering if you could introduce yourself, if you're comfortable and able to do so, share your pronouns, and maybe tell us a little bit about what program you're in and your background. So over to you. Calvin.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Calvin Prowse. My pronouns are they, them, or she. I'm currently a Master of Social Work student at McMaster in their critical analysis program, which is their thesis stream. They also have a placement stream. And you know, it's a one-year program. And so I'm just doing my research stuff now, and things are finally starting to come together. I'm in social work, but I kind of come from a background that's more focused on things like peer support, disability justice, ad studies, critical disability studies. And so my thesis is actually about the professionalization of peer support and how that impacts the everyday work of peer support workers. I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you so much, Calvin. That was great and really important. Peer support is so critical. Margaret, may I turn it over to you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and program and your pronouns if you're comfortable doing so.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Margaret. My pronouns are she and her. I am at the University of Windsor working professional social work program. So it's a very long 32-month program for folks who don't have a undergrad in social work, but a related discipline. So my related discipline was women and gender studies and equity studies, social justice. And it's geared to folks who are kind of working in some way or shape or form in the field. And then we do coursework on the weekends. So work-life balance is definitely a challenge in this program. And in terms of my area of work that I'd like to pursue, I'm interested in children's mental health, particularly infant and children, so under the 0 to 6 years age range. So
Thank you so much. Really important work-life balance. We all need to know more about that as grad students or future grad students. And Karen, last but certainly not least, over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Karen Tang. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a PhD clinical psychology student over at Dalhousie University. So I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So for my program, I'm in my third year. I finally finished courses after 3 years, so yay. And now I'm focusing primarily on clinical placements, so working with adults, as well as completing dissertation research surrounding stigma, culture, and video gaming disorder. But super happy to be here.
Wonderful. And, you know, we're talking a lot about safe returns to campus and how those look and what those look like. And I'm wondering, and I'm going to start with you, Calvin, if that's okay, if you could tell us sort of what you think a safe return to campus look like. What would that entail for you or for people you've talked to?
Yeah, I mean, in short, taking the pandemic seriously, which people seem to be doing less of these days. I think, you know, having masks be required, having physical distancing, including in classrooms and outside of classrooms, are really important things. But then also the availability of online options, knowing that like it isn't necessarily safe for everyone to go back in person, me being one of those people. So I'd like to see more adoption of hybrid flex learning where courses are being taught in a classroom, being live streamed and having that option and giving people an actual choice, saying this works better for me, I'm going to come to class or be online without asking people to prove that they need it. Yeah.
That's really important. Sort of this, you know, not always needing to prove, and this need to just have this flexible, fluid learning environment that's adaptable. Margaret, any thoughts from you on that? That safe return to campus?
Yeah, I think I started this program in 2020, and then I ended up going on a 2-year maternity leave. So prior to that, it was in person. And due to the pandemic, our program chose to go completely virtual. There was definitely colleagues of mine who, you know, would have preferred the in-person. From a personal point of view, I like the online option. That's just when you're dealing with kind of different needs and you're just able to be a little bit more flexible working from an online option. So yeah, for us, it was just an automatic thing. And now that program, I think it's been 10 years in the working professional program. It's now permanently going to be an online program. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, those transitions too, like that happening where programs are deciding, hey, this has worked. We've seen it work. We know it works. We're hearing that it's working well. So we're going to keep it and we're going to modify it as needed. And I can see for sure if folks are working or if you're doing clinical work or, you know, raising a family, that online, that virtual gives you so much flexibility and also just from an accessibility perspective. I heard from a number of my own students this year that I taught, we decided to keep our classroom virtual, that they not only felt they could attend, but they felt like they were able to put the energy that they were normally putting into just getting to the classroom into actually being in that virtual classroom and learning. So thank you so much for that, Margaret. And Karen, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would echo what Margaret and Calvin have already reiterated. So a hybrid approach would be ideal. It just accommodates for a lot more people's different needs and abilities, and also remaining flexible and compassionate with like deadlines. I found that instructors were quite kind during the pandemic. If you could, I mean, I don't know, prove if you had COVID or something, or if there was like a mental health day that you had to take, there was so much more kindness and compassion that I hope that post-pandemic, whenever that might be, that can also be normalized as well. And on the topic of like clinical placements, I know I was like just wrapped up my first year when the pandemic had hit. And so certain placements certain clinical placements allowed their students to see clients like virtually or by telehealth, by phone. And I'm hoping that placement sites can still kind of adopt that hybrid approach depending on what the client needs are. Like I currently see like a third of my clients via phone, another third by Zoom, and another prefer in person, right? So I think it really does depend, and it helps cater to everyone's different needs.
I think that's so true. And, you know, I always said as an instructor, I can't mark all the papers in one day anyway. So if you need some flexibility, and unfortunately, we do sometimes have the Senate or the university's guidelines in terms of when we can accept papers up until and when we can't. But, you know, that flexibility and even flexibility with assignments. So, you know, if perhaps, you know, presenting is a challenge because of internet stability, allowing folks to record a presentation and send that recording in, just really having this flexible, creative approach. And it's actually, I think, made me a better instructor. So I think your point is well taken. I'll throw this out to anybody because I know some of us are virtual and some of us are maybe still on our campuses. What has been done on your campuses to sort of promote that safe return to campus, if anything? And Calvin, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think most of the stuff that I've seen that's been really focused on that has been more collective action from people who are being impacted, not so much from the administration. A few people and myself got together and started working on some things, and we ended up forming a group called Pushback on Mac that's about kind of resisting this unsafe and inaccessible return to campus. And we did a lot of work. We made some petitions, had a panel discussion, made a policy brief, wrote some open letters, made a survey, and things like that to kind of raise these concerns, although they haven't, the administration has not been super responsive, but I hope that at the very least the pressure is getting them to rethink things a little. And there's also been some advocacy from staff and professors, and from QP 3906, which is the teaching union. There has been, in my situation, there has also been some advocacy from my actual department that they've kind of went back to the administration and said, you know what, we need to do things a little bit differently. This is not going to work. And that's been somewhat successful. And then there have also been just some profs that have been willing to kind of focus on doing what's right as opposed to what they're told they're supposed to do. So there's been some, but the return to campus has still been pretty unsafe.
Yeah, for sure. Karen or Margaret, any thoughts wanting to weigh in there? No pressure, just thought I'd leave it open, or Kathleen even.
Agree with Calvin.
Yeah, me too. It's interesting, at my institution, one of the big challenges is this sort of push and pull, this sort of dichotomy between, hey, we want to be safe and we want to do this properly, and it's a business, right? So getting bums and seats and feet back on campus, and also just knowing, I think that for some people, that's not going to be possible. And thanks, Kelvin. I saw you put something in the chat, so I'll leave that there for folks to look at. But just moving on, for those whose program has been virtual, has that been helpful, or maybe there's been some challenges? And what have those been? And maybe Margaret, I'll start with you, because you did share that right off the hop that your program was virtual.
Yeah, I think there's definitely challenges in the sense that there's been quite a various kind of an uneven quality between classes, whereas like there's 6 sections or whatever being taught of one particular course, and whereas previously there would be professors meeting up in person and kind of going over the curriculum and making sure that students are kind of engaging with the material relatively the same way. There's that's kind of lacking that quality piece about it. And then in terms of challenges, yeah, just kind of engaging with your colleagues. Recognizing that some people have differing needs, but being able to engage with people like on the camera and stuff sometimes would be great, just to kind of feel like a sense of safety when we're discussing things, just being in a social work program. And yeah, virtual, but there's been lots of benefits as well, like Calvin and Karen have said. It allows for different access needs, and recognizing that the pandemic is not over with us. So just kind of being, flexible to those different needs. And then, yeah, I was going to say, Karen, yeah, I had a virtual placement as well, and that was really helpful. So I'm hoping that, again, we've learned some things, that this is possible, and we can kind of take some of that and carry it forward, recognizing that some people do need in person if you're seeing a client or whatnot, but yeah, just having that flexibility, I think, is really important.
Other thoughts? Kelvin, want to jump in there?
Yeah, I found it to be really helpful. It hasn't been safe for me to be on campus, so being able to go online has been really important. My program was online for 3/4 of the year until like February reading week. And that was kind of a mess. And then people were kind of told to go back to campus, and I had to get like formal accommodations for that and more medical documentation, but I was able to stay online. I think in terms of online, there have been a couple of challenges. I've found that I really need captioning in an online environment, and I don't need it so much in person. Just the way that like the sound is distorted makes it harder for me to process. And so I've had some challenges with that throughout the pandemic, but this year has mainly been okay. I've had captions. I found like the lack of structure of not actually being able to go to campus to be really difficult. I really need that structure to like thrive. And so it's been really challenging there. And it's also been pretty lonely. It's pretty hard to make connections with people in my program when we're not in person and we're just online. And at the end of class, everybody just leaves. And then in terms of like, I have had a couple of classes that have had a hybrid flex approach where people have been in person and I've been zooming in, and it's good, but I found that I've had a lot of issues in terms of like the audio quality. There's kind of like one microphone in the room and I can't really hear people on the other side of the room. And then the speakers aren't loud enough, so those people can't hear me, and it's really hard to jump into a conversation. So it's important that we have those options, but there's still room for improvement.
That's a really good point. I think hybrid needs to be done, but done well. And so I think, I remember sort of likening it to being at a party, but sitting on the sidelines. So I'm sitting watching on my screen in Toronto what's happening in London, but I'm not really there. Like I'm sort of only half there. And the other issue too was sometimes I'd be put up on a really big screen in a room, but I didn't actually know that. So that that for privacy concerns is something to consider as well. So those are really good points. Before we move on to our next question, any other panelists want to jump in with that last question?
Yeah, I can chime in. So for me, I found that it's been both fantastic, and there's also been unique challenges. So when the pandemic hit, I thought it would take like a month to figure everything out. So I flew back to Alberta, where my home is, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just hang out with my family with the meantime. Turns out the pandemic did not take a month to get over. So I was actually back home with my family for almost all of second year of my program. So it was great in that I was being surrounded by family. So it was less so like the social isolation. But it was also challenging in that it's a 3-hour time zone difference. So I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to attend class at 8 a.m. So there wasn't any flexibility around that, unfortunately. And I can't even imagine if you're like an international student and you want to go home and spend time there while you're attending classes in Canada, how that might be really difficult to kind of accommodate. So there have been some challenges around time zone differences. Can we be more flexible with like recording lectures instead, so you can watch them later at your own pace? And I found like accessibility wise, things were not addressed early on in the pandemic. Like not every instructor had like automated captions available on Microsoft Teams, or Zoom didn't have that as a potential option, I guess, until people started to notice that like accessibility wise, this needs to be addressed. So I think it's been helpful in that it's kind of shined a light on accessibility issues and needs that need to be addressed, while also trying to balance everyone's different needs. Like if you're in a different time zone, how can we kind of address that?
Yeah, time zones were a big one when we were online for sure. And I think, you know, that's another thing too, right? Is this sort of synchronous versus asynchronous, and having that blend so that people who need to be together to learn in a space can do so, but people who may need to take that learning away and just reflect on it for a bit can do that as well. I really want to kind of dive into this next question around like, how is graduate school different than undergrad in terms of accommodations? And if it's okay, Kathleen, I'd love to open it up with you because you actually mentioned it in your introduction, and it's one of our questions. So if it's okay, I'd love for you to start us off, and then I'll turn it over to the next panelist.
Sorry, the question was how are
is
accommodations different?
Yes, in graduate school than in undergraduate education. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of referred to how graduate school in general has different components than the undergraduate level. And I think when you get to things like placements, like Karen mentioned, even collecting data out in the field, comprehensive exam, working on a thesis, what do accommodations look like for those things? I don't know. There's no document that says, oh, here's what you're supposed to do if you're gonna provide accommodations for a student who's going and collecting data. So it comes down, I think, a lot of the time to the accessibility consultant or accommodation consultant to work with the student to try to figure that out. And often folks in accessibility services are not always aware of what the different aspects of graduate school are, and how to navigate those different contexts, and yeah, what accommodations actually look like. So because there's no form that says here's how you accommodate, you know, for a clinical placement or whatever, it comes down to negotiation between the consultant and the student, and then go from there, I guess. But there's just so many additional pieces to academic requirements, and then outside of academic requirements too. So PhD students, and depending on your program, you have to publish, you have to go to conferences. I mean, academia in general is not accessible. So what are all those non-academic things that graduate students are also expected to do? And how are accommodations provided for those when they're not academic requirements?
Yeah, and I'm really, yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for kicking us off. And as someone that's just sort of been through the publishing cycle, it's really sort of underpinned by a lot of ableism in terms of timing. So not kind of accounting for COVID time and CRIP time. And then there's of course the more practical navigation of the publishing interface, but just even, the mechanisms, like what counts as legitimate, credible academic knowledge. We won't get into that today, but in terms of a publishing record, it can be harder to establish that depending on the type of research we're doing. And if we're within a space where we're maybe doing like more critical reflexivity in our work and publishing those sort of reflexive pieces, sometimes those aren't always seen as much value as a more sort of traditional scientific, and I use that in air quotes, piece. But we'll leave that there. That's a whole other webinar. Calvin, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess personally, I haven't felt too much of a difference so far. There have been some differences, but they haven't super impacted me. The one thing is that like the accommodations were sent to like the department chair as opposed to the professors, and it does require like students to reach out to the professors and have those conversations, more like self-directed. But that was something I was kind of used to and how I was approaching it in my Bachelor of Social Work as well. So it wasn't too much of a shift. I didn't notice much. I did notice that when I went to go like reactivate my accommodations and have my meetings with the accessibility folks, a lot of the accommodations, well, not a few of the accommodations that I had, they said couldn't be carried over to grad school. And one of those was like I had accommodations for consideration for alternate types of assignments. Instead of writing a paper, I could do a little PowerPoint presentation or something like that, which wasn't actually a problem because my department was still cool with it. Like my profs were fine with it, but the reason was that, since I'm in a thesis program, the writing is a big part. So it was kind of like annoying, but kind of a non-issue because my professors understand that writing is not everything. They were okay doing that kind of off the record.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think what that speaks to is sort of back to what I was saying a minute ago about like, what counts as actual work or research or scholarship, and, a podcast or a presentation. Those are becoming more and more common ways for us to demonstrate what we know. Certainly podcasting is. And so I'm thrilled to hear that your professors are on board. That's great. Any other panelists want to jump in with that question?
I can chip in. So I don't know if this is how it works across all universities in Canada, but for us, we do have an accessibility advisor or consultant who knows about our specific graduate program, which I feel like is rare, but they're aware of like all these different requirements. Like we've got our TA-ships that are mandatory, we've got clinical placements and then research and then courses. So I found that to be quite different from undergraduate accommodations where they might not be as familiar with the program. But like Kathleen was saying, graduate school, there's so many different program requirements beyond just research or courses. So I found that my graduate program accessibility advisor was fantastic in that we were able to come up with some short-term accommodations because I was in a car accident a couple of months ago and I suffered a concussion. So I had to take medical leave and everything and implement some short-term accommodations. And they were able to ask me about like, okay, so what can we do about your clinical placement? Can we like defer your TA shift? How can we address X, Y, and Z in these courses? So I don't know if there's a specific advisor for every single specific graduate program. But that's definitely something to inquire about, I think, when you're applying for graduate school programs.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Margaret, any final words before we move on that one?
Yeah. I think I was a bit later in the game when I got like diagnosed and got my paperwork and everything in undergrad. So it didn't seem that long ago. So just trying to navigate that system. But yeah, I think it's also related to the structure of my program, that it's basically 3 weekends long. And maybe like 6 weeks a course. So where I would have built-in time for extra time for assignments, I only have 6 weeks. So it's really hard to like get the extra time. So again, that falls on me to be super crafty with my time management, have the privilege to take a mental health day or a day from my work, and kind of like figure it out. And then it makes it a little bit more complicated because a lot of our work is group work. So it's not just me relying on my own. And I've been very fortunate to find a good group to kind of, they know how I operate, that I'm like ahead of time because I need extra time because of also my family, and they've kind of understood that piece. And so, yeah, I think it's structurally that there's only 6 weeks in a course, so that's hard to do it. Add a layer of working with other people where I feel comfortable kind of disclosing stuff, that makes it easier. Yeah, and then in terms of other things like we don't have note takers anymore. I love that you guys talked about captioning. My mind is blown, being like, wow, we don't have any of that in our program. That's something I'm gonna bring back. Yeah, and then I would say the other thing has been really good, which I didn't access maybe in my undergrad, maybe I just didn't think about it, or maybe because of the virtual component, is getting those e-textbooks. Have been like alternative comedy, like that has been really, really helpful as well. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Fabulous. Yeah, really important, thinking about again, like how something like e-textbooks, which, everybody certainly in my program used when we were online together, has actually then resulted in us not needing to ask for an accommodation. And it's interesting to think about how sometimes in these environments, when we modify the environment, it means we don't need to ask for an accommodation because it's just there for everybody. So it's a kind of cool thought. But thinking about work-life balance, and we touched on this earlier, I'm going to throw it open to whomever wishes to answer, but how do you maintain that work-life balance between grad school and clinical placement and work and family and just having some downtime? So I'll throw that wide open. Calvin, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I don't know if I know what the words work-life balance mean anymore. It feels more like work-school balance, and maybe you have 30 minutes of Netflix at the end of the day. But I think that, yeah, it's been hard. I think, throughout school, like a lot of like my medical care stuff has kind of been deprioritized, unfortunately, partially because of COVID stuff and not wanting to like go out to do blood work every so often or go to the dentist, things like that. But also just because there's always so much stuff that I need to get done. I have found that, like accommodations have been really helpful in terms of like getting extra time for assignments has been something I've really needed this year, especially, during those weeks when I'm like, oh my God, they're forcing everyone back to in-person. I can't do any work because I'm too busy worried about my life. Or as other things come up, just being able to like take a breath. And not burn yourself out too much. I think, a couple of friends in my program and I started meeting weekly throughout the semester as kind of like a peer support group to chat about, our experiences in the program and just our lives. And that's been really helpful, especially in an online environment where it's really hard to make those connections without like scheduling it into your calendar. And then recently, one of the things that I've found really helpful is this summer and last summer as well, a few friends and I started like meeting up once a week on the weekend. We'd just go to a park and spend some time together, have some snacks and read some books. And that's been so helpful for me, giving me a little bit of a break, some time where I can do something that's not school and not feel guilty about it.
Thank you so much. And those are, really important. Like managing care needs, for some of us takes time. And again, I think part of this shift has resulted in people not needing to sort of think about, okay, so if I need care when I'm at school and then I need care at home, what's that going to look like? And then I have to coordinate paratransit. So just taking all that out of the equation, and I heard this anecdotally from my own students, and being able to really put that energy into the learning. Yeah, those are all really good points, and even thinking just sort of about managing accommodations and how much extra time that takes, that invisible work, that invisible labor that so many of us take up. Any other panelists wish to comment on this question around work-life balance?
I can jump in.
Yeah, jump in, please do, please do.
Yeah, I also echo everything that Calvin mentioned. I definitely talk about having a work-life balance, but I don't know if I necessarily am the best at applying it, despite mentioning it to my clients. Don't tell them I said that. But I find that I used to be like, okay, I'm going to work like 24/7. That was like my first year of grad school. I worked like 24/7. I did not take evenings off, did not take weekends off. Had a major panic attack, realized that did not work for me, and then became a bit more intentional in trying to set more work boundaries, like email boundaries as well. And then in second year, I was like, okay, so I'm not going to work evenings and weekends and have like that specific like restrictions around my work time. Come third year, car crash, concussion, everything went downhill again. And I learned from that is that I need to be more flexible. Like, for example, because I do suffer from like chronic migraines, sometimes I will have to take a migraine day because I literally can't get out of bed. I need to be in a dark room. I can't look at screens. So yes, I try not to work evenings and weekends, but I also try to be flexible and give myself that compassion that I need to be like, okay, so if I'm taking a migraine day, then maybe the next day I might have to work a little bit in the evenings, but still not, again, trying to like guilt or like shame myself for kind of being flexible with that. But overall, I would say it definitely does depend on your care needs and your needs as well. So I don't think there is like a specific guideline for everyone that works for everyone. I think you do have to know like your own needs, your body, and like what it needs in terms of try to manage your work-life balance, whatever that means.
For sure, yeah, and just knowing your own pace, your own rhythms, for sure. Anybody else want to jump in?
I can.
think.
Sorry.
Yeah,
go
please.
ahead,
No. Oh, Margaret and then
Margaret.
Kathleen. Awesome, great. Margaret, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I echo the same thing. I'm not sure exactly how to implement work-life balance. I'm much better in the summer, spring months to be able to get out and do a little bit more walking and stuff. I've yet to figure out how to do the self-care part in the winter, but I don't like winter. But yeah, for me, it's being super structured with my like agenda or something, or kind of just planning it out, and also lowering my expectations of what I think I can accomplish in one day, and just being kind of compassionate with myself about that has been kind of helpful that way. So yeah, just a couple of things that I do to kind of keep things going.
Great. And Kathleen?
I would add that as someone who is done the PhD and now working, I really regret not spending more time earlier on in graduate school to figure out what self-care meant to me, and actually working on developing healthier practices around self-care. That self-care wasn't a word that I even used. I just grinded and grinded and grinded. And it all caught up with me, I would say, during the pandemic. And it takes over a year to recover from burnout and to develop healthier practices. So for folks who are in graduate programs, definitely start thinking about self-care, start playing around with different strategies, tools, so that you can continue to develop those practices. Because when you get to the workplace, some things will change, other things will stay exactly the same. And as a faculty member, my life is exactly the same as when I was a graduate student, only there's a lot more to it. So definitely try to work earlier on developing those practices.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to leave a few minutes for questions. I think I'll ask one more, and then we'll just have our last few minutes for questions and some wrap-up announcements. So just the final question I want to end with today is really just around looking at, you know, what is the transition from having classes to working on a thesis like? So thinking about, you know, whether that's online or in person, what was that like? I know for me, I kind of had this sort of deer in the headlights, like, what do I do with myself now? So anybody, I'll just throw that open for anyone to answer.
I'm currently at that stage where I just finished classes in April and I don't know what I'm doing with myself. So full honesty here. So I'm trying to, as Margaret reiterated, like trying to create some kind of structure, because I don't have like a nice like class timetable now. I know I just have 2 days of practicum, but then I've got 3 days where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So for me, I also find creating like a routine or some kind of structure to start my day off is what I really need. So right now, for me, it's trying to figure out, do I want to have like coffee in my morning and I'm like reading for pleasure, or do I want to like at 6 a.m. go out for a run? I'm still kind of trying to figure out what works best for me and my self-care routine. But just full transparency, I'm still trying to figure that out. So I'm curious if the other panelists have any thoughts on this.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I definitely agree, Karen. The lack of structure is super hard. Especially like, yeah, doing a thesis where it's essentially like my entire summer is I just do a thesis. Like, that's it. And like, how do I break that down? I think that the transition for me has been really hard, especially because I have been falling behind on some of my assignments. So I'm actually still wrapping up some of my assignments as I'm starting my research, which is not super fun, but we're getting there. And I think one of the things that was surprising is like how much work I actually needed to do before classes ended, like in terms of doing my ethics application, which took like 10 times as long as I thought it would. I would be happy if I never have to do another ethics application again.
Yes.
Yeah, and so just didn't realize I'd need to do that on top of my coursework. A couple of things in terms of like that structure. My research is doing like focus groups that happen like every 2 weeks. And so that's kind of a way that I'm structuring it, in that I do a focus group and then I have 2 weeks where I can like review the transcript, write some things about it and start like writing as I go, as opposed to like until the end. So it's kind of forcing me to work on things earlier. And then also like I have been filling up some of my time with other things, like you know, spending weekends at the park. And last month I took like a peer support training that gave my week a little bit more structure. And now I'm taking an ASL course that, again, it's just like something in my week that makes me know that the week is passing. And it's quite helpful for me to have that, as opposed to just an entire week with nothing on it.
Wonderful. Anyone else before we end off? I think at this point, I will open it up to our Q&A. You can do Q&A with us today in a couple of different ways. You can pop those questions into our chat box, and we have a moderator that will help us read those. And also, if you wish and you're comfortable, you can unmute your microphone and you can ask the questions to us here. And this has been a really wonderful dialogue with our panelists, with Kathleen, just learning about everyone's journey from, the different perspectives, professional program, thesis program, PhD, social work, clinical social work. So any questions from our audience? I've seen some things happening in the chat. So maybe, Janique, I can start with you and just get you to read out anything that's happening there.
Well, I don't think Unique is here, so I can
Okay,
help
Aaliyah,
out
would you
with
mind
that.
helping us with that? Wonderful,
Yeah, for
thank
sure.
you. I was
All right.
wondering perhaps if there was just
Yeah,
a delay.
I
Wonderful.
took a quick look. All right. I'm just gonna scroll up a bit to make sure I get them in order. All right. I have a question from Megan. How do you mitigate staying motivated to work through your thesis when you found a job and that affords more of a work-life balance? So how do you balance work with school is the question.
So we can throw that open to any of our panelists. I want to talk about staying motivated. Anybody feeling motivated? Oh, yes, Calvin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had that exact specific situation. I haven't been looking at jobs because I don't want to find one that I want that will make me want to quit school. But I think it's really important to do research on something that you care about enough that you're going to want to think about it nonstop for months. And find ways to like play with it and make it fun. Like writing papers is really difficult for me. But one of the things that I've done is I've kind of been like writing down some like reflections and making them into like a little zine that has a bunch of stuff in it that I really like because it feels more fun. I don't feel like I need to write in an academic way. Just put it out there and then I can use it. And I trick my brain into thinking that I'm having fun when I'm really working on my thesis.
I love what you've just said there, because what you've really done is sort of dismantled, the traditional sort of way that we conceptualize academia. And I think that's really important because a big part of what we've learned through the pandemic is the importance of knowledge translation and knowledge dissemination. And that is through things like zines. You'll have to tell me at another chat exactly what a zine is. I've heard the term, can't say I know what it is. Podcasts, technical papers, infographics, like all those things are so important for getting out the knowledge that is being sort of generated through research. So I think that's a really important point, and trying to make it bite-sized and fun. Anybody else want to tackle that, or shall we go on to our next question?
I think the other thing is, like, I found I am with Calvin, I do not like writing papers, hence why I didn't do a thesis. But for me, but even like kind of just talking out my ideas, that's how I always kind of been able to translate my thoughts onto paper, is like chatting with people about my ideas and then making it less overwhelming has been another way. So yeah, I think just finding different ways to produce knowledge, and I even like how even transmitting knowledge and producing it. I think we need to be a bit more open to those kinds of things as well.
And adding on to that, so one thing I always teach my clients, with grad student clients, they're always like, oh my gosh, grad school is such a grind, it just never ends, and it's hard to visualize progress, right? So one thing I always recommend is you want to visualize it. So perhaps you've got like a pile of paper clips on your desk, and every time you read a paper for 15 minutes or you write a paragraph of your paper, you move one paper clip over into a jar. So over time, your brain can actually start visualizing that progress is being made, despite feeling like you've got 200 papers to read. right? So anything that kind of cues your brain to notice that, hey, there is progress being made, and progress can be done. You can do this with coins, candy, and you can treat yourself afterwards, whatever your brain likes, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are a great point. Any other, we're really getting to that. Oh, we're over the timeline. So I think here I'm going to stop us. This has been so wonderful. I think we could go all afternoon, but I know folks have places to be. So I'm going to just thank our panelists, Calvin, Karen, Margaret, and Kathleen for being here today, sharing your story. Thank you, Aaliyah, for moderating and for that lovely land acknowledgement at the beginning. Thank you to Alan and Frank, our tech team, and our interpreters, Gilda and Isabel. This is not possible without a lot of people that make this kind of event come together. So we want to do some thank yous there. I will encourage you to look out. There will be a recording sent out of this event today. I'm happy to stay behind informally and just chat, but I do want to be mindful of times. So I think here we'll stop the recording. We'll thank our panelists, and I'll let you go if that's all right with everybody. So thank you.